Hi, I'm Max Feitz, local Keller Williams agent here in southeastern Wisconsin, and what we're doing today in this video podcast is I'm going to be interviewing the wonderful Dr. Alicia Ann Hellenbrand and sort of guiding her on exactly what it takes to hire a realtor. So what it looks like in the process of interviewing agents, both when you're going to purchase a home or you're going to sell your home. And a lot of times for most people, it's buying and selling. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each sort of agent that you can work with and why maybe it's better to choose one over the other. So we're just going to start this off. Honestly, I know you've never purchased a home yourself because that would include both of us. And what we're going to talk about right away is if you were to sit down with an agent, do you have any expectations as to what you should actually ask your realtor, your potential realtor?
I feel like the top things that come to mind are what percentage are you asking for of the sale?
Like commission?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And then just the big one of like why you over anybody else?
Okay, absolutely. So commission and commission structure is super important when it comes to the sale of your home because the purpose of selling your home is typically to move on to your next home, but it's also to get the most amount of money for your home in today's market. I mean, you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the bottom line really, really matters, correct?
Yeah.
Would you say that the bottom line matters more than how much the agent actually makes?
I mean, not necessarily as long as I'm getting the best deal or everything that I want. I guess I don't necessarily know that I care about how much commission you're getting.
Okay.
I just feel like it's nice to know the number.
Absolutely.
The percentage, but then other than that, I don't really want to know how much you're making off of me because I'm already spending a lot of money, so I don't need to know anything else.
I understand that. I actually really understand that. So one of the biggest things that I like to guide potential people into conceptualizing is it's not so much how much money they save. So there are limited listing brokers who are not full service brokers who will put your home on the MLS for like $1,500 up front. So they collect that commission up front, which means they're paid before any result happens.
Ew.
And yeah, you can see that there's real pros and cons to that.
Motivation kind of dies once you already paid for a job.
Yes, and don't get me wrong, they absolutely want a great result because they want to continue their business. So there's structures too. So in the state of Wisconsin, commission is actually negotiable. Now, what you're going to find is with a lot of full brokerage services, like I represent Keller Williams. I'm a salesperson through Keller Williams Realty. We are a full service brokerage, meaning in certain other levels, what lower level commission structures allow them to do is they'll put your home on the MLS and then they will literally put your phone number as contact information. Yeah.
Oh.
And you are responsible for scheduling and negotiations and stuff like that. That is literally a service that just puts your home on the MLS for you, and you're responsible for negotiations, etc. Now, there's brokerages in between that as well as people who will put your home on the market for 3.9, 4.5, 6, and I actually have a commission structure. And that's really, really important because I don't like to call it a variable commission because it doesn't vary according to the outcome. It varies on how we come to that outcome. So if I'm doing a traditional sale and I'm putting your home on the market for full market value, and I'm handling all the negotiations, the marketing, everything that goes into the process of selling, which is a lot. I mean, from the point of helping you get a mortgage to the point of negotiation of the house price, whether or not we can even include an inspection contingency or an appraisal contingency or negotiations after that, helping you align yourself with a closing agent, helping you go through underwriting, make it to closing, and guiding you of the pros and cons of spending money during the period. We talked about Aaron about that.
Yeah.
And making sure that you have an absolute great result. And now part of that is my commission structure is 6% plus $295, and it's just part of the commission structure.
Okay.
However, there's a varied stage to it. If you find somebody from church, if you find a neighbor who's interested in your home, and now the big thing with our market right now is if you find that person, you bring them to the table, it invokes a wonderful opportunity where I don't have to charge full commission to you because you brought your own buyer to it.
Okay.
Now, the tricky part and challenging part is almost never is that person going to be the person who's paying the most in today's market.
Okay.
So right now we're in a crazy seller's market. Now it's not impossible for buyers to win offers, but it is challenging, and you need someone in your corner to help you navigate what's appropriate for you writing a loan.
Okay.
So one of the biggest things when you're interviewing, like let's say you're going to buy your first home. one of the things, honest to God, that I don't think most people talk about is you're going to be spending a lot of time with that person.
Yeah.
Like an intimate amount of time. In today's market, especially if you don't have the most competitive loan package, you're probably going to wind up seeing a fair amount of homes, writing a lot of offers, and unfortunately sometimes losing.
Okay.
So you're going to be spending an average like time that you're with that person on a showing is anywhere from a half hour to an hour per showing.
Okay.
So you stretch that out over like a month, you're intimately spending a lot of time with somebody, and it's important that that chemistry is right.
Yeah, I better like you.
Yeah. So I like to think of it as like shopping with friends versus like hanging out with like a salesperson.
Sure.
And it's really, really important that I act as an educator versus somebody who's just trying to get the deal done. So it's really important that when you align yourself with someone, it makes sense, the chemistry's there, and you feel very, very comfortable. Well, one of the things that's necessary for you to feel really comfortable is market knowledge and knowledge of the process and kind of knowledge of what it takes to win an offer or what it takes to sell your house for the most amount of money.
Okay.
So on the buying side, you're interviewing a realtor. One of the biggest things in the world is when you sit down with your realtor. Now, this could be a friend, this could be a family member, this could be somebody you found online, this could be my strange face that you found in your house. What's really, really important is understanding that they must present themselves and they must have great market knowledge. Now, where that's kind of a back and forth is most of the time when we're shopping, we're not always going to be shopping in like this one zip code or this one neighborhood.
Okay.
So market knowledge is important, but it's also important that when you align yourself with a realtor, you recognize their ability to learn new neighborhoods on the fly. And that's really, really important in today's adaptive market, because if you're shopping in New Berlin and you have a lower budget and not the most aggressive loan structure, you may lose like every single time because somebody's coming in with all cash on one deal. The next deal, somebody just bid $30,000 more than you, or they dropped contingencies that you didn't feel comfortable with. So, I mean, it's kind of scary. Like if I were to tell you like, hey, in order to win this home, you can't have an inspection.
Hard pass.
And that's fine. And it really depends on house to house, how comfortable you feel, whether or not you're willing to drop that. The other one is the appraisal contingency, which is no matter what the bank thinks the home is worth, I'm willing to bring the rest of the money on top of that in order to close the gap.
Probably also a hard pass.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that's a scary variable that if you don't know that much about the house, it's really, really important that you align yourself with someone who educates you on the exact risks you'll be taking in order to win. The other side of that coin is proper education will help you win a house that otherwise you may be too afraid to actually go after.
Okay.
So one of the things that's very important, especially when you're kind of like vetting out a buyer's agent, is you want to know how many times they've done this. Like, and don't get me wrong, newer realtors can be absolutely excellent realtors because normally what they'll have at their brokerage is a mentor or somebody who reviews absolutely everything they touch.
Okay.
So it really, really depends. And most of the time in that area, you want to be comfortable with that person, especially if they're a family member or a friend. Even my own friends, I mean, we still go through a full interview process because we're talking about the biggest investment of their life. Yeah. I mean, selling your home, we're talking about anywhere from a couple grand profit, depending on the home price, to tens of thousands to possibly even $100,000 or $150,000 and upwards of there. Losing $10,000 because you chose a friend is hard to swallow. Yeah. So even my close personal friends vet me, and it's important that that I can educate them and make them feel comfortable with the process, and that I'm very, very knowledgeable on the market. Okay. So one of the other things is when you're reviewing a potential buyer's agent or a seller's agent, there's a list of questions that I actually will send out after this via email, or you can reach out and ask for it. And it helps you determine whether or not that person is a great fit for you. And this is going to be more resume based, not necessarily personality. So one of the things that I would ask a potential agent, like if I'm looking to purchase a home and you're sitting across from me, you're the realtor in this scenario.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. Is how many transactions have you done overall?
Me personally, zero.
Your answer's not going to be excellent. And then of those transactions, how many times did you represent the buyer and how many times did you represent the seller? Okay. So where that question can kind of divide whether or not you choose them specifically is when you're talking about listing your home, and if you're going with an agent, you're interviewing agents, and you ask them those questions, like how many transactions you've done, and the number's like impressive, like I did 36 last year, I did 15 last year, like something really respectable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, that is fantastic. How many of those transactions were you representing the seller? Some agents actually, unfortunately, have represented 0 sellers. So it's important that when you're navigating this process and you're interviewing agents, you can determine, because it's all like, how often have you done this?
Mm-hmm.
What's your expertise level on each side of the transaction?
Okay.
Because when you're going to sell your house, there's really, really important factors such as what's your list to sale ratio?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that is?
I assume how many houses you've listed and how many houses you've sold.
That is an important ratio because in this market, that number should be 100%.
Okay.
I'm actually talking about the ratio of like, I put my home on the market for $300,000.
Okay.
What did it sell at?
Oh,
did it
okay.
sell at $270 or did it sell at $330?
Okay.
Now, right now, we're sitting in the heart of West Dallas, New Berlin, Milwaukee counties, where we're experiencing actually a varied state of that. So some agents are putting on the market and they're drinking the juice, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, and they list it beyond market expectations, and then they're settling for down here.
Okay.
Now, there's certain strategies where that works because eventually you're lifting people up to a price point where they wouldn't have reached before.
Okay.
And when you're interviewing agents, but that's an important factor. However, if you see a pattern of like every single one of their homes, they listed above what the market could bear and wound up having to price reduce.
Oh, okay.
Or
are they just giving me a bigger number to like appease me of what I think my house is worth, and then saying, "Yeah, we'll try."
Yes,
is
part
it
of that
worth it?
is
Probably not, but we'll try.
And if the realtor is very, very honest with you, and that's a huge portion of this, if the realtor is very honest with you and then saying like, let's do something optimistic, and then if we can't reach those numbers, let's reorient, and there's a strategy to this. You don't just necessarily want to do a price reduction, because then your days on market increase and it looks like something wrong with your home.
Sure.
There's a strategy to that. So we can make people reach, but if they don't ever come that distance, or you're not ever settling, or every single time this agent has a listing, you're seeing that they're putting the home on the market above market expectations, it's one of two things. It's I'm appeasing you, meaning I'm telling you a higher number to win this relationship, to make sure you list with me. And then once we're in the relationship, you kind of feel tied to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, that's another thing I want to talk about is like the legal contract.
Sure.
We're going to circle back to that. Is you kind of feel tied to me because you think everything's going as according to plan. Well, the issue is all your neighbors put their homes on the market and they sold in 4 hours or 2 days or whatever for above asking. Well, now that agent who has consistent numbers that are below what they told you, you can kind of recognize that, hey, I think they might just be telling me a number to win my business.
Okay.
Which becomes super dangerous if that's a lack of market knowledge or their inability to actually recognize what the market can bear. That's scary.
Okay.
If they're constantly just trying to appease your business. So the old adage for realtors who, especially when they come to like strangers, is they're just going to tell you a high number and then they're going to reduce their commission to literally cut out all the other realtors. Well, that's negative. That always ends in a negative result typically, because what ends up happening is you don't sell for that high number, obviously. But now you're playing a dangerous game of like, will anyone write on my home at all?
Yeah.
And then I have to do a price reduction, a significant price reduction typically,
Okay.
to actually get my home in the normal market bearing area, which can be problematic, especially in this market where in New Berlin, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 2-stall garage, that home should move in hours, like no hesitation, bar that there isn't any like
major issues.
Yeah, major issues with the home. That home should move relatively quickly. The other thing, especially when you're talking to people who may or may not have the perfect record, is just ask them about those specific instances. If they're like, hey, my list to sale ratio was low, but I want to talk to you about these instances. So one of the things, like a pricing strategy that might work, is if you're in an area that doesn't have high home prices, like if you're under 100,000, it actually might be worth it to list it a little bit higher and make people reach up, because there's not as many people trying to purchase that home.
Okay.
But when you're in the price point of like 180 to 400, that's kind of a dangerous game to overprice it and kind of settle down, because you're losing the bidding war aspect.
Okay.
Like, Have you ever seen like an auction on TV where the Texas guy is like, one over here, two over here, hey, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
That is what drives up prices in today's market. Now, that's on paper and through emails in this scenario, but that is exactly what's driving up home prices in today's market is competition.
Okay.
And that's really, really important when you're interviewing your buyer's agent is determining exactly how they'll price your home, why they're going to price it that way. Feel free when, like, a realtor brings a CMA to you to put your home on the market, go through it with them. Ask them why. And the other part of that is kind of trust them. Like, I know, like, at this point in the interview, when they're doing the CMA, you have an emotional attachment to your home that the market doesn't.
No. Yeah.
That the market, most buyers are going to see many homes before they see your home. So they're already judging you against every other home they've ever seen. And especially with buyers is they're shopping in a range. So they obviously go see their dream home at like $550,000. Then they run the numbers and they're like, wow, that's wildly not in our price range. And then they come down to you. Well, now they have high expectations of the condition of your home and square footage, things like that. So it's important that when a realtor is going through a CMA with you, that you actually kind of internalize everything they're saying, like price per square footage and condition of the home especially. Now, also, when we're talking about really sitting down with a realtor, this is something that most people don't do in our industry, and I think that it's a flaw. It's ask for references.
Okay.
Like, this will be a red flag on a red flag. If the past year I did 20 transactions or whatever, and you ask if I could have, you could have 10 of those people's phone numbers to just ask them about their experience, and I just say no, that could be a red flag as to the service they provide or how they felt about the outcome. Now, I wouldn't expect all 20 because some people they just don't want to talk to strangers. I get that. Or they had their own bad experience, maybe because of their own expectations, or maybe because of a miscommunication that, honest to God, wasn't the agent's fault. I mean, we're all human. However, it is an emotional process, and I think a lot of people are very amped up about the top result. Like he said, it's possible that we could get 320, but he also said it's more likely we settle around 315 to 310. But all they grab onto is the 320. Yeah. So it's important that, when we're going through this process, that you have those references. You can talk to those people. And that's what's really important is right now, and I'll just name drop, I could give you Nate Nange Cook's number. I'm not going to tag them in this to make sure they feel awkward. We had a wonderful experience. They had a great outcome. They were in a great area of Menominee Falls. That was definitely trending towards a seller's market, and we capitalized on their home beautifully. And then on the other end, we did strategic things to actually do to make the home buying a really positive process for them. And it was just a wonderful outcome. And there's many other references that I could give you if nothing else, their email. They'd be willing to, it's very emotionally removed when you give them their email.
Sure.
So references are a huge thing. When you're actually talking to agents too, now this actually isn't talked about a lot, and it's kind of sad, but there is a 98% like failure rate. Now, don't quote me on that statistic, but that's the last thing I heard. There's a 98% failure rate of agents in the first 5 to 7 years. Something to that accord. So it's what you may see, and especially in today's market, is sort of fly-by-night realtors. People who think that the market is just like all gravy, it's easy money, and I'm just going to jump in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and then they get 1 or 2 listings over the year, but are you an expert if you've helped anybody do anything twice? Like, remember when you helped me replace the power steering fluid line?
Come on. It was so boring.
Okay, well.
It was so boring. And I technically wasn't doing anything. I do feel like I became an expert in shadow puppets.
Yeah, so
because I did it more than twice.
Arguably, you're not good at assisting people with auto repairs.
I mean, it was cold.
Okay, so that's a good enough answer for me.
There was mosquitoes.
So
this is not my fault.
Yes. So it's important that you align yourself with someone who is, quote unquote, like an expert in the field of helping people buy and sell real estate. And one of the questions that I always lead people into is that expertise, their competency when they're interviewing agents. And one thing that actually makes a big difference is whether or not that person is part of a team. Now, I don't even know if you're aware of this. You might be just because I talk about it all the time, or you tune out.
Vaguely.
It's totally
Yeah.
fine. But there are real estate teams, and then
Sure.
there's solo agents. So do you know the difference between the two?
I assume the team you work with multiple people, or there's something. There's more people.
I mean, honestly, you hit on the biggest point. When you're dealing with a team, the person that you're interviewing with to help you purchase a home is most of the time not the person who's going to be in direct communication with you and helping you sell your home.
Oh, you.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just gonna say openly, like, there's real pros and cons to both. One, typically on a team, it's on good teams, established teams that are well oiled, really have systems in place and know what they're doing. It's a flawless thing.
Okay.
And you should be, and that's the point where I would recommend, if you're actually interviewing an agent, they say they're part of the team, interview each person you're going to be interacting with.
Okay.
Because if your buyer's agent is just like the coolest person in the world, like absolutely charismatic, like Ted Lasso, just a wonderful human being, but then the person helping selling your house doesn't pick up your phone calls, doesn't have a communication like guarantee, doesn't get back to you with like the appropriate amount of information, or literally just treats you like another number,
Sure.
that would be off-putting.
Yeah.
And to think that that's two people, and sometimes you're dealing with 3 or 4, there's transaction coordinators, listing agents, buyer's agents, team leads, all sorts of roles.
Okay.
Now, when it's done well, it's an amazing thing, and it's really, really nice to see how in sync they all are, because they typically have like daily meetings. They go over all their clients' expectations, what's going on in the process at that point. And then there's solo agents like what I am. So I have a few assistants that help me with the background stuff, like putting your home on the MLS, filling in the data, pulling market statistics. Shout out Killian, thank you. That really help me do my job really well. And my job is to help you get a great expectation of the home buying or selling process, which includes being able to answer all of your concerns in a timely manner.
Okay.
I mean, the craziest part is my personal cell phone is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's hilarious when people are just like, oh, that is a Google number that leads you to like a sub-Google number, and then I'll listen to that message and I'll get back to you, but I'm also going to call you back through Skype, so you don't have my personal number. At any given time, that can be really frustrating, especially when you're in the middle of negotiations.
Yeah.
So when you're interviewing realtors, you kind of have to dictate how you want your experience. And I've found personally in the past that most people, especially when they're buying and selling, want to talk to one person about what's going on.
Yeah.
Because kind of a horrible feeling is being like, I called my agent in the morning, we're in the middle of negotiations, I want to know if I can get a moving truck for the 31st so I can get into my home on the 1st. I called my buyer's agent. He said that the selling agent would call me back. The selling agent took 5.5 hours to get back to me just because he's a busy guy or whatever.
This sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. It can be an absolute nightmare. With a solo agent, with someone who's really on top of their stuff, I get back to you right away. Yeah. And I also have, like, that's another thing that will literally floor anyone when you're interviewing them. Ask for their daily schedule. Just be like, I just want to know when you're available and what the expectations are for communication, both for me and for you. Okay. Like most people, arguably, work about an 8 to 5 job, or they work second shift. And I want to know if I'm not able to contact you in this 4-hour period. As an agent, I want to know that. Yeah. So if I get new information, if something is going on, I want to be able to reach you in the time that I know you're available. So with big teams, it can be kind of problematic because they're not always perfectly on top of that if they're not a cohesive team, which when you're building a team can be a thing. Yeah. That is another thing. If you're interviewing a team, ask how long they've been a team and ask how long their team members have been on that team. Okay. So for me, I'm a solo agent. I've been on my team the entire time.
Go team.
I've been the captain, the water boy, and sometimes the guy who puts the lines on the field. We've grown out of the lines on the field and the water boy portion of it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But it's important that you have that one go-to contact I have found for my past clients, especially in the interview process, and that they know exactly when they can contact me and I'll be available. Okay. So I don't know if that's always the case for most agents, and especially if you ask them on an interview, that could floor them. And don't necessarily let that deter you, but it should be a reflection of how prepared they are for that question.
Okay.
Meaning they don't really have a game plan. And sometimes what makes me nervous is they're like, I'm always available. Well, that's not true. Most people have family obligations, and most people, especially when they're solo agents, they have a period of time where they're actively going after new clients.
Mm-hmm.
So not all of my clients are coming from friends and family and stuff, obviously. So I am actively pursuing new potential clients, whether that be whatever, marketing, door knocking, or actually running my business, coordinating with my team members, assigning tasks, doing follow-up calls, talking to other agents.
Open houses.
But if no one's, even if people are there, sometimes I will absolutely text you back. So it's important that you understand that like communication, especially when it comes to like your biggest investment of your life, is huge. Is a very big part of this process. And to not be able to have that open dialogue can actually be like really scary. So what I would ask, especially when you're dealing now with a solo agent like myself, is do you have any assistance? Like, do you have anyone to help you with the stuff that's not necessarily pertinent to your actual sale of your home or the buying process, whether that be marketing, whether that be filling out contracts, stuff like that. Now, there are certain aspects that obviously I want to own myself, such as every single time your pen hits the paper, I'm the person explaining to you exactly what you're signing, pros and cons of like literally every line. So it's important that both when you're buying and you're selling, you have that personal experience. You can bank on me. Like every single one of my current clients, past clients, potential clients know that there's a time period where they literally might not be able to reach me because I'm doing active prospecting. So communication is really key. The other thing that we touched on earlier is sort of when you're going to put your home on the market, you have certain questions. And most people have these questions. It's, what's the commission? Because it's important because really what the question is, and this should be the question, it's just most people aren't educated in this. What can I expect to make after the sale of my home? Because a lot of people focus on that number, that percentage, and then they focus on that listing price.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to win your business is just be like, oh, we're going to list it up here, and I'm going to charge you nothing to do it. Normally, when the spectrum is that far apart, you get exactly what you pay for. Like if you're paying them at all, or if you pay them up front, which is a nightmare on its own. So it's really important that when you're comparing agents, and this is a big thing. One, commission structure is important. Don't get me wrong, it's always important. But really focus on the bottom line and also focus on the other expenditures that are included when selling your home. Because it's not like when you sell your home, it's literally just paying off your mortgage and just paying the agent. There's other expenditures that go into that. And you can, when you go to list your home, the agent should bring you a breakdown. It's called a seller sheet, so you know exactly what to expect at the closing table. That way, you know what the check is to move on. That's part of that communication. Like, if I don't know how much I'm going to make from this home, how do I know what I can afford in the next home? So that's really important. The other thing is when I'm sitting down with people, both on the buying side and the listing side, when they go to sell their home, listing contract duration. So like when you sign a legal document saying that I am representing you, I have fiduciary responsibilities to you, how long, and I love this term, am I locked into you for?
Okay.
Well, for me, I think it's a bad business practice to sign somebody up and literally hold them tight and be like, you can't leave me. That's like a swim fan movie that just goes awry. Like, oh, you're with me for the rest of the 12 months. So one of the business practices that I do is, yes, we sign long-term listing contracts and buyer's contracts for a multitude of reasons. But at any point, if you don't like my beard, if you don't like my face, or more realistically, if you're unhappy with how we're working cohesively, you can always call me up and we can cancel the contract. Now, it's never happened because that's a huge priority in my life is making sure that people are super informed and very, very happy with the process, or very informed.
Yeah.
This is a heartbreaking process. I mean, if I'm representing you and we lose out on the first 3 houses and it's honestly not your fault, it's just like we were beat out by a cash offer that was $30,000 over and it didn't have any contingencies. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It is because home shopping by itself, normally you have expectations of when you want to move. The problem is we're all dictated by the market. So when you're aligning yourself with the agent, one of the things that guy or gal should do, or whatever, is be very, very open and transparent about the fluidity of dates, about the because if we go shopping, and I'm just going to be honest, if we go shopping and you have an FHA loan, which requires a lot of extra like inspections per the appraisal, per the bank, and we're shopping in an area where there's 30 other buyers looking for exactly what you're looking for, it's going to be really, really challenging to beat out 30 other offers, knowing that they have to jump through extra hoops in order to get your loan processed.
Sure.
So the listing term, to circle back, the listing term is I normally sign my listings for a year, and knowing that at any point, if it's not a great fit, we can absolutely mutually separate. Also with my buyers, sign it for a year. There's a reason for both. On the buying side is I've had people who are shopping for their dream home. So they're not having a job transfer, they're not selling because of a change in family status or whatever. So it could take a while to find that dream home and then actually win a bid and then get into the home. I mean, it can take up to 9 months, a year, depending on how strict your home buying goals are. If you want a 4-story Victorian home that's got a white picket fence in the heart of like Delafield, there's one, maybe. And that guy has lived there for 35 years. So we've been sending letters and stuff that he's just thrown in the trash. It might take a while. And then on the other half is it's really important to have that open communication with you so that you know, like, hey, if you're renting, my lease is up here. We need to find you a month-to-month situation, or we need to find you a living situation where we can continue to shop where you're not locked in for another year. That's a really big part of it too. And on the listing side is it'll never take a year. Because I'm not going to price it to a point where the market won't sell. I literally won't.
Yeah.
If I sit down with you and you don't like my numbers, I am honestly giving you my best interpretation of the market. And if your expectations are wildly above, I'm not going to do you a disservice and honestly me a disservice of doing all the marketing, putting it on the market, having like no showings, and your expectations are still wildly high because I overpromised. And then you're just sitting there and you can't sell your home. That's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge and a warning that I love to give, especially when I'm helping people who are like out of state who I can't like help because my license is restricted to Wisconsin. Is just like contractors and just like everybody else you hire, don't always go for the cheapest option or the best alluring option. Make sure that you talk to a few people.
So if I see a wide discrepancy between what they think my house is worth and what you think my house is worth, or another realtor thinks my house is worth, I should probably like double check or be like, why do I have all these different numbers if you're all looking at the same market?
Absolutely. But and you bring up a great point, because one of the things that you'll find is like if you interview 3 realtors, 2 of them come in like within 5,000 of one another, and then one comes in like 25,000 higher. You can ask that one who came in 25,000 higher, ask for the CMA.
Show your work.
Show your work. I want to see your work. I don't believe you. And then when you get that, honest to God, I would send it to the other 2 realtors and be like, what's going on? Why are you? Because the other thing is like one of those realtors who came in lower may be the guy you want to work with, but you want to get the most amount of money for your house, obviously. That's a natural instinct. You're trying to help your family. You're trying to help your own personal financial situation. I totally get that. Send it to those other 2 realtors, and they will pick it apart. They'll be like, honestly, I wouldn't use this comparable home, like this home that sold by you, because it's wildly bigger. It's in a different part of the neighborhood. It has different amenities. Like if there's a brand new kitchen in a home, and then your home is seriously 55 years old with a 55-year-old kitchen, and then they ran the comps according to all the refurbished homes, it's going to boost your numbers in a false way.
Okay.
So like the average or the price per square footage is going to be off.
Okay.
And that's where that market knowledge and that actual knowledge of the real estate environment is so key.
Okay.
Because my parents' home versus your parents' home are in wildly different areas of Wisconsin. If I ran comps for both, they would have wildly different numbers, even though they're kind of similar. I mean, ranch-style homes, 3 bedrooms, what have you.
Yeah.
They're similar homes, but they're wildly different price points.
Okay.
So it's really important that when you sit down with that person, that they're able to explain that to you. And if you feel off, if you think something's off, whether on the high side or the low side, feel free to open that dialogue with the other realtors. Or if nothing else, reach out to a realtor you trust. And I'll be able to guide you accordingly, even if you don't choose me, sad face. So it's really important that when you are obtaining the new information from the different realtors and you're choosing your realtors, you do it based on their experience. You do it based on exactly their resume, like how they've performed in the past year especially. And how good is that fit? Again, you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person and you want to have that comfortable, trusting feeling. Yeah. So one of the things that's like brutally important for me is I know a lot of super successful realtors who are have mixed reviews on how they run their business. And I'm reading Google reviews because I'm like, oh, that's my competition. I want to see what they're doing well. I want to whatever. Sure. And then I just start reading reviews. Like people on their own time went on Google and just unhappy results. Yeah. So honestly, just for everyone who's going to be watching this, for everyone who's thinking about interviewing their potential agents, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together this interview sheet where exactly how you go through how to interview a buyer's agent, how to interview a seller's agent, and what to decide to do and how to make a comfortable decision for you and your family about moving forward. Basically, like your top 10 or 15 questions to ask someone, like your buyer or selling agent. Yes, and like what to look for. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Because when it comes to like buying and selling, I'd say resume is the number one priority, honestly. But number two is finding that fit. Because truthfully, I mean, I think it's like 45% of people when they buy their house or sell their house, I think that's the minimum. I think it's way higher actually. They never use the same agent again. Okay. Ever. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of reasons. One, most realtors revolve in and out of the real estate business because it's brutal. It's just sales. All right. And being a good salesperson or a sales agent, because really that's what we are. We're agents. We represent you as if you were like a sports athlete or kind of like a lawyer. We have fiduciary responsibilities to you. It can be challenging, and it's kind of brutal when, you know, it's an emotional business that you're not. This isn't like a commercial building where you're just looking at the numbers. I fell in love with that home. That's where I want my kids to grow up. That's, you know, I fell in love with the yard. I want 50 dogs. Like, this is an emotional process, and it's important that you align yourself with someone who makes you feel comfortable about the process. But I think a really big thing right now is I want you to ask me raw questions because I think that's going to resonate with most people the best. So when you're going to interview me as a buyer's agent, obviously you want to review everything I said, but do you have, like, you must have other questions. Yeah, I mean, give me your like 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch of why you, because we went through all those other questions that you're like, ask these questions to every realtor, but the one that we didn't really cover or we kind of touched on before is the why you. And I know it's going to be different for every realtor, but I want to hear why you and your beard. Absolutely. One is, it's a resume thing. If you review my numbers, like list to sale ratio, if you call my past clients, because that's the biggest thing in the world, I have no illusion most of the time that I'm going to win you over by myself by just sitting across the table. I think references from your friends and family are the number one reason people choose their different service providers. Sure. Like you buy a car here because your dad bought a car here, your brother bought your best friend bought a car here, and you trust that process. Okay. So the number one thing is I would absolutely reach out to my references. Two, when we sit down across from one another, I need a little bit of time for you to warm up to me because the more time I have FaceTime with you, I think you're going to fall in love with who I am. Very true. It's an unfair thing here, but I think most people actually will resonate with the fact that I'm literally here to help you reach your goals. Yeah. And I think that's going to become very transparent when we sit down. And I know how you hate when I ask sales questions. Like, what are your goals for the home buying process? My least favorite question. I know, but it's honestly very, very enlightening for me because I actually figure stuff out. Like, is like the home condition, is updates, is 3 bedrooms, is this? I need the probing though. I need the, because if you just ask me what are my goals, I'm not going to be able to answer that question. So you need to like
pull it out of
Yes,
me like
that's
a
exact-
dentist. Just
yes.
rip those teeth out because I'll never answer the question unless you
And
prompt me.
honestly, that I think that's one thing I do have an advantage over a lot of people is I influx, I add humor into all of our conversations so that it gives you a more of a comfortable feeling. Like
Yeah.
when we walk through houses and you're like, I loved it. What did you think? And you see me in the corner like, it had some real pros. We should talk about some of the cons.
Yeah.
We should talk about some of the expenditures that you can expect right away.
Yep.
And again, I'm always going to bank on my past clients and friends and family to really sell myself for you. But when I'm sitting in front of you, it's literally about my resume, how I make you feel about the process.
Mm-hmm.
So one, we got to make sure that I present numbers that look great. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. List to sale ratio and people getting into their homes in expected timelines or just being educated to know how difficult that could be.
Mm-hmm.
The number two thing is, especially when selling, is you don't have to believe me. I will present enough material in front of you, and I know people who do this because I have an engineering background. They're not going to listen to my words. They're going to review my work.
So are you coming with a comp already done for my house or for the address that I
Yes.
want to list or
Yes.
buy or whatever?
When
Okay.
I'm stepping in front of you, most of the time, actually, I normally do it in a two-step process. One is I'll come into your home, I'll get to know you a little bit better, and most importantly, I get to know the home intimately.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that a lot of realtors don't like to talk about, because honestly, most people can't really handle it. It's your home is worth a spectrum, and your home is only worth what a buyer's willing to pay you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. The other little caveat of it is when we're doing a comparative market analysis, which is determining the value of your home in today's market according to comparable homes that sold,
Mm-hmm.
other homes that are on the market, and what we call those is people who are hoping, and then there's the reality. The reality is what's sold,
Okay.
and then the active listings are hoping, but it gives you an idea of your competition. The other thing is we're always looking at the past because we're always looking at homes that have previously sold.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live in a neighborhood and a whole home hasn't sold in your neighborhood in 10 years, we are doing an educated guess based on the neighborhood, based on the square footage, and really our market knowledge of how many buyers are in that buyer pool.
Okay.
So it's really important that when I'm presenting that stuff to you, because that'll be the second time we sit down,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm giving you factual evidence. And one of the best things, honest to God, even if you know, love, and trust me, interview other agents around and see what they bring to the table and compare and contrast how you felt when you sat down, how well you felt that they communicated the process to you, your expectations versus reality.
Okay.
Because unfortunately right now, a lot of people, and I totally get this, their only real access to like housing information are the major marketing websites like Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com.
Mm-hmm.
And those are wonderful sites to start, but they literally use a mathematical equation.
Okay.
Meaning like 3 bedrooms plus this many square feet equals this. But if you have a neighborhood that's butted up to a neighborhood such as Milwaukee and Tosa,
Mm-hmm.
there's a physical street that divides the two.
Yeah.
And you pull all your comps from Tosa, your home in Milwaukee looks amazing.
Sure.
However, an educated buyer's agent is going to come in there and be like,
Not so
no,
much.
I don't think that's appropriately
Yeah.
priced because things change. Your availability to parks, to school districts change. A lot of things change. So it's important that you have an educated person in front of you.
Okay. So my other question is, you've gone through all this. You gave me your elevator pitch on why you. If I choose you, what do you then need immediately from me?
Depends if we're on the buyer side or seller side. So I'll start with the buyer side. The very first thing is if you fall in love with me, and I'll actually start this conversation. Thank you, baby. And I'll actually start this conversation even before you've chose me,
Mm-hmm.
is we need to get you in the position where you can write offers.
Okay.
And that's why that interview with Aaron was so important.
Yeah.
It's we need you financially ready and capable to write offers on your dream home, because the worst feeling in the world is having like somebody be like, oh, I want to see this house and I want this house and I love it. And then we go to get pre-approved and a couple things happen. One, we're just too late. Like that home sold in the amount of time it took you to get your paperwork over to
Oof.
Aaron. Or B, we find out that maybe that's too much of a stretch for you,
Mm-hmm.
which happens. I mean, I think a lot of people especially when we're talking about like credit scores and the nuances that go into credit scores, like if you have this credit card paid down this much, but then you have a car loan out for this much, it affects you negatively. But if you were to put $800 into the credit card, then your credit score goes up 30 points or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuances. So the very first thing on the buyer side is let's get you like prepared and ready and able to actually close on a home.
Okay.
Because every single listing agent, including myself, if we get an offer without a pre-approval letter, we review it, but I reach back out to that agent and I ask what's going on with the pre-approval. It's such a market expectation
Yeah.
that if I have no offers, none, and you send me an offer without a pre-approval letter, we're not signing it.
Sure.
Well, how about this? I would advise my clients not to sign it until we have proof that they can close, because otherwise they legally tie us up,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get out of it, but it's not as simple as just being like, no, thank you, we're done
Sure.
here. On the selling side, there's actually a whole process. So on the selling side, we got to talk about your timeline, and actually in both scenarios. But the most important part is getting pre-approved. Because if you're not pre-approved, then the timeline doesn't matter.
Sure.
On the selling side, the timeline matters a lot. We need to talk about things like if you're selling in today's market, we need to establish where you're going to right away, because it matters, because inventory is so low.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't have any houses for you to move into and you're expecting to move on a certain date, like my kid is going to be out of school and it would be the easiest moment for us to move here, I would recommend that we align your next house first, even if it means we have to do a bridge loan, which is you carry 2 mortgages.
Sure.
Because getting a home with an accepted offer with a home sale contingency, like I have to sell my house in order to buy yours, is an anomaly that almost doesn't happen in today's market. So I need to talk to you about your timeline and talk about what your expectations are for moving into your next place. Now, if you're like, I don't care, I already have my next living situation lined up, that's perfect. Now we're just talking about when do you physically want to be out of the house. Because if we can sell your house in a matter of hours or 2 days or whatever, the timeline is wide open for you. The next thing is we need to present your home in the most appealing way possible, which means either a staging consultation where I have somebody whose job it is to make your home the most beautiful it can possibly be, come in and talk to you about whether or not staging is right for your home, or if there's cost-effective, simple solutions that you can do. I had a listing recently of a condo that I walked in and it looked like a pottery barn. I mean, I brought in a staging consultation. I called her up. I sent her photos, and she's like, Max, there's not much we can do. Like, it's gorgeous. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I would recommend that, we do the obvious things, declutter countertops, clean everything, Windex, stuff like that. And then I do what's called a marketing blitz, which is before it actually becomes available for people to walk into your home, decide they love it, and write it. We've been marketing your home for 5 to 7 days, which builds up anticipation, and it gets the most amount of people in there in the shortest amount of time. Because really what we're trying to do in this market, especially in a seller's market, is create that bidding war.
Okay.
We want like 35 offers to where if it comes down to it, we either just choose the best one or we can counter. And that's where the real money is made.
Okay.
And unfortunately, if you choose an agent who misinforms you or unfortunately is just not that well educated in learning that marketplace, whether or not, because that's a big thing that we talk about is local experts. That's a thing of the past. Like if I can't help you buy a house for a fair price in an area that I've never been before, that is a problem in today's market, because we have enough information that I can educate myself on a market literally in a couple hours. I mean, there was the Sheboygan listing up north. I had to educate myself on that market because it's a wildly different market than Milwaukee, than Waukesha, than New Berlin, all the way down to, Jefferson, a hobby farm.
Yeah.
That hobby farm was the first farm I've ever done, and it's a different market because your buyer pool is limited to people who want a hobby farm, which means not farmers typically, unless they're buying the land and they just don't care about the house sort of thing. And it's not people who want an acre and a half, for their dogs to run, and it's just challenging. You need to be able to educate yourself on that market intimately. And sometimes, this is another thing, if you're interviewing an agent who doesn't know the market that well and is honest with you and talks about exactly what they're going to do to educate themselves and exactly how they're going to do that. So one of the things that I do is if I'm in an unfamiliar market, I'm calling agents in that market who I know, love, and trust,
Mhm.
and I'm learning about that market intimately. I
Okay.
mean, I know how many pigs per acre you can have in Jefferson County.
Shut up.
Yeah, I learned all this stuff. Perk tests, there's soil samples. So whether or not it's like an inner city condo like downtown Milwaukee, all the way to a farm, if you have the right agent, they are going to be able to absolutely guide you through that process and make you the most amount of money or help you purchase something and win. Because that's the difference.
And ideally, they should have like a network of people to be like, if I don't have the answer for you right here and right now, I know someone who does, and I will get it to you ASAP.
Exactly. Okay. And that's that's an excellent point. I don't want anybody deterred by somebody saying like, they probably just shouldn't say, I don't know, and lean back. But having someone say, I don't have the answer for you right now, but I can come back and give you like an educated answer and exactly the directive that we need to go for that, I'd feel comfortable with that agent.
Right.
It's one of the things that nobody cares about. Nobody cares about. Not a single buyer or seller I've ever worked with ever asked me about it or ever cared. Is certifications through the National Association of Realtors or other realtor-related certifications. I have one. I've been through at least 2 others, but it costs a significant amount of money to get the certification after that, and it's a yearly fee.
Oh.
I don't keep up with it because nobody cares.
And the education, I assume, doesn't change all that much.
No.
Year to year.
No. You have to. No. There's no continuing education on an accredited buyer's representation certification.
I don't know the words that just came out of your mouth.
Accredited buyer's representation. It says it's a certification that says I have successfully helped people purchase homes.
Oh, okay.
And you have to have at least, I think, 3 or 5. And I went through the course, and it was like a 3-day course or something. And then I had all the credits, and they're like, yeah, I think it was like $300, and then it's another $300 every year. And I went back to my office.
Just to be like, I have proof that I've sold 3 to 5
I've
homes.
had proof that I have. Now, I do have on the other side, a pricing strategy advisor certification that doesn't require yearly fees that I keep, and it's at the end of my name.
Sure.
Whatever. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to point out is when you talk to people, ask if they've done any of these accreditation programs, because if nothing else, it shows you that they're intimately involved in their further education. Because just like any other profession, if you become stale and you stop learning, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. I mean, one of the biggest things in the world is like Bayview right now. Bayview, having a garage versus not having a garage is a significant price difference. And if you're looking at Bayview and West Milwaukee and South Milwaukee and Cudahy, and you don't recognize that, you could lose offers or you could undervalue your own home.
Okay.
And I mean, if you have 4 walls and a door that doesn't work, it adds significant value to the home because those are things that can be remedied.
Sure.
Some of those homes don't have any parking spaces, don't have any garages. Yeah. I mean, it's all about your needs for housing, like you and I. I would love to live in a high-rise with a door guy, and I think you would like the polar opposite.
Yeah.
So the idea
not quite the hobby farm, but
yeah, not quite the hobby farm. So I thank you very much. I'm really excited because I think this is going to be really valuable for people who are just like, even if they're just thinking about getting into the market, and they're like, I think I'm just going to go with whoever calls me. You could get lucky, but know your facts. Reach out, ask for these interview questions, and know what the expected answer should be. Or just reach out to me, and I'd happily give you an interview, and I could even run it for us.
Should have brought that big card with your phone number on it. Just flash it up here.
I love it. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Go buy, sell.
Go buy, sell.